My name is Heidi Cosgrove, and I am the 11th grade counselor, and I will follow your students to senior year. You should have a pink form in front of you, which is the registration sheet, and an actual copy of the PowerPoint. I know it came out kind of small with the print, but I'm very visual, so I like to have things to follow along to, and this presentation is being recorded by Park TV and will also be up on the internet as well. I've seen probably about close to a third of juniors right now in their English classes. Tomorrow is where I'm going to be seeing pretty much all the rest of the juniors. I'm going to be in every class period tomorrow giving this presentation. So some of your students might not have heard this yet. So if you go home and talk to them about it, they might not have any idea yet. So just some general information. This week is when I am in the English classes. And then next week, the English classes will be bringing the students down to the computer lab where they will actually input their course registrations in PowerSchool. So they have about a week to make some really good decisions and be thoughtful of some of the courses that they would like to do. One thing I said to them these last couple days is I said, you know what, you guys, think about this. The next time you register for classes, it'll have college or university or something like, like that on there. Yeah, and the eyes just went like, whoosh, like that, and they're like, oh my gosh. And I said, you know what, you guys, enjoy your last round of registering for a K through 12 system. And you could just kind of see the excited look, but yet that kind of sad look on their face and kind of that unknown. So that was really fun. Just some information of what your students got. They all got a copy of their transcript. So again, many will be receiving theirs tomorrow. But we went over what the transcript has on there. We talked about their GPA. We talked about how many credits they should have. We talked about their class rank. So many of your students will have that sheet, their transcript. Many will get it tomorrow. So you can certainly ask them for that information. And then we also talked about the breakdown of a GPA. And they could look at their transcript and they could see where they rank, where their GPA is, and could see how that letter grade is following accordingly. And we also had the kids take a look at their transcript to make sure that they don't have any incompletes or incomplete pluses. With an incomplete on their transcript, that actually calculates like an F in there. So it's really important that they take care of that. And that would be if they are still missing an assignment or have a test to do with a teacher. An incomplete plus might be that they have a book obligation, a calculator out, a fine on the book. And so I really wanted students to understand that they need to double check that, especially as they're coming into the final phase of their junior year and then senior year, because we really can't send out transcripts to colleges with incompletes or incomplete pluses on. So I just really wanted students to understand that piece of information. Students also wanted to know, yeah?
Can you see the transcript through PowerSchool?
No. No. Students also wanted to know where they were for credits, like what that meant for them. To graduate from St. Louis Park High School, students need a total of 46 semester credits. So each class that they take each semester is worth 1 semester credit. So they could take a look at their credits on their transcript to see where they were falling. And I'd like to give them kind of an idea of what that number means. And so I told the students, if you're around 26 to 27 credits, that's the minimum of where I want you right now. So they could just kind of understand what that means. Because essentially when they enter senior year, I would like them at a minimum of 32 credits. So when you see them tonight or tomorrow, ask them for that transcript and have them show you some of the things we talked about. Have them point out where their GPA is, where their credits are, where their class rank is, because they should all now be getting that information by tomorrow. I know students often get a little nervous about having study halls. And so I did a little fun fact for them, and we did this last year for them as well. But if a student never, ever, ever takes a study hall in their high school career at St. Louis Park and they pass all their classes, they will essentially graduate with 56 credits, 10 more than they need. At the same time, if students take one study hall every semester of their high school career, every semester, and they pass all their classes, they would still graduate with 2 more credits than they need. So it's okay for students to have a study hall, provided they're doing what they need to be doing in the classes. For students that have transferred in, I wanted them to know just that, because their transcript will often look a little bit different with quarter credits or tri-credits, and I wanted them to know I hadn't forgotten about them. So I do have a slide for our transfer students so they can help understand what their credits mean. So the other graduation requirements, this is what it comes down to. The 46 semester credits is what students need to earn. And they must also take state tests. State tests in writing, they did that in 9th grade. Reading, they did in 10th grade. And this year, they're going to be doing the math test. A few years ago, students had to pass these tests. No longer is that the case. They just need to take these tests. And a new requirement that the state gave us this summer was that all students, all juniors that go to a public high school in the state of Minnesota now have to take the ACT test. And it has to be on a state-issued date, which is April 28th during school. And it's the actual ACT. It's just like the ACT that a student might take on the national test date. And they can use that for college admissions. They can use that score. That is no cost to them. And it'll be given during the school day. Students got a little nervous because they wondered if they had to get a particular score. They were worried, what if I fail the ACT? What if I get a horrible score? Does that mean I won't graduate? And I said, nope, you just got to take it. And if for some reason students have to miss this date, the state will allow an additional makeup date. But we're really pushing for all students to be here on that April 28th test date. Now, just to go over some graduation requirements. Yes, there's 46 graduation requirements, 46 credits. But as I told the students, they can't all be in underwater basket weaving or, I teach that one, I'm just kidding. No. But they have to be in certain areas. So for instance, students need to have 8 semesters of English, which is 4 years, 8 semesters of social studies, which is 4 years, 6 credits in math through advanced algebra, which is 3 years, and 3 years of science, and there's a laundry list right there. Students have gotten to know me well enough to know that I'm not a laundry list person. My brain doesn't really work that way. I'm such a visual person, hence that's why I have to give handouts and everything like that. So what all your students are going to have, and this is a really hard document to see, but this is essentially their credit check that they now have. And that laundry list that I just had up there is this, but in a more visual format. So that laundry list is English, social, math, science, health, and PE. So all of your students now have this document in their SLP apps account. So if they log into their apps account, they'll be able to pull up their personal document that will detail their credit and their progress towards graduation. So just to break it down a little bit, this is for English. And when you take a look at it, each box represents 1 semester. And this should match up with the transcript that they have in hand. So this is taking into consideration what they have completed in 9th grade, 10th grade, and first semester of 11th grade. For me, it was really important for students to have this in hand so that if they were ever worried about, okay, where am I progressing in graduation? I can't quite remember, that they can always have this on their phone or tablet or wherever they can get an internet connection so they can just take a look to see where they are with graduation requirements. So in the next couple days, talk with your student and have them show you their Google credit check. That's what I call it. I also told them be careful because, and I always like to pick on math, to be careful because you might have a different color on there. You might have a red with an N, which means that class was not passed. If there's an incomplete plus, they might have an orange for Go Park, Orioles. So just to be mindful and watch that their credit check. At the bottom of that credit check, we went over, again, talking about their credits because I could tell them what the minimum is of where I'd like them to be, but they always like to know, well, where could I be? Where could I be? So on their credit check, I actually have a little note on there that says, after first semester of 11th grade, you should have a minimum of about 27 credits, okay? Many students are above that. Some students are below that. But ideally, if you want to be in the kind of that perfection area, anywhere between 30 and 35 credits. So now your students will be able to talk with you and you'll be able to ask them, let me see your credit check, let's see where you're at with things. Some students will be in a situation where they might need to recover credits for a variety of reasons. Perhaps a class was not passed, or perhaps a student transferred in and they were not able to do our credit requirement, for example, civics. A lot of our students that transfer in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade need to do this Plato credit recovery to get some credits. So if your student is in a situation where they might need to recover some credits, I told them to come talk to me and we can figure out and put a plan in place to do that. The rite of passage in junior year is student aiding. The kids love to do that in place of a study hall. So I did remind them that they cannot register for student aid as we go through the registration process because it's just the study hall. It's essentially what it is. And so at the beginning of each new semester is where they would come into the counseling office and fill out a student aid application. And they would sign it, you would sign it, and the teacher would sign it. And then they could student aid. And they do get one elective credit towards graduation. I did ask them, okay, so if you are student aiding right now, can you student aid as a senior? And they said, well, sure, but I just don't get credit. And I'm like, exactly. So they can student aid again instead of sitting in a study hall, because sometimes they just like to help out teachers and kind of learn what's happening in the class, and it's kind of a nice little shadow experience as well. So our kids like to do that. So now going to the pink form, the actual registration form. So just a few notes on here at the top. I like students to register for about 10 to 14 classes. And I'll talk about a little bit more in depth on that in just a second. But then just a couple notes on that registration sheet. Each box that you see represents a one semester class worth 1 credit. And 2 boxes represent a full year class, 2 credits. Okay, so just to have a little idea behind that. We now have the course book online that details all of our classes as well as some excellent descriptions of those classes. So that's a great resource for students to be looking through. Another great resource is their teachers right now. So for instance, like in math, asking their math teacher, should I continue with math? If I do, what level should I continue with? So to really utilize those teachers. So we walked through the registration sheet to help students understand what would be the next progression as they register for senior year. For English, we have a lot of students as juniors that are in the IB English program, either the SL or the HL program. Both are 2-year programs. So students that are in the SL right now would continue with the SL program as a senior. So they would check the SL. For students that are in the HL program, they would continue with English HL for that 2-year program. It's pretty cut and dry for English. Students that are in regular English, this is where English in senior year gets a little funky. Because English 12 in senior year, regular English 12, is a one-semester class called Stage Literature. So if a student's in regular English 11, they would go ahead and register for the one-semester course of Stage Literature, but they need a year, so now they have to select another English elective on the back of that registration sheet. Many times students will ask me if they're in that situation, well, Ms. Cosgrove, I'm taking small group communications right now as a junior. So can I use that for next year so I don't have to take another English? And my answer is technically yes, you could from a graduation perspective. But from a college perspective, my response to students will be grab a full year of English if you're in that Stage Literature situation. Okay? For social studies, as we're heading to senior year, tends to be a little bit more cut and dry as well. Students that are in IB history with Mr. Brubaker will continue with IB history as a senior. And that history class is called 20th Century Issues. Students that are in US history, AP US history, definitely have some options. I would say our #1 senior social studies is AP Psychology, which is a full year, and can potentially issue college credit. Even students that have never ever taken an AP course before will often have AP Psych as their first experience in an AP course. And I think students just find the course very interesting. It's a study of people and how we tick and how we, why we tick the way we do. So I think it's a very successful course for students who maybe haven't done any AP classes. Some students said, Ms. Cosgrove, I'm not really interested in doing AP Psychology. I just wanted to do the traditional social studies. Okay, well that would be doing a semester of economics and a semester of geography and global awareness. That would be the other senior social studies. And I had a great question today from a student that said, well, I know I want to do AP Psych, but I'm also interested in economics. Could I do economics as an elective? Absolutely they could. They certainly could. The reason US history and world history are up there, with students that have transferred in, they might need that particular course. There's also AP Economics, AP Micro, and AP Macro. Certainly we've had students that want to do AP Psych and they want to do AP Econ. That's totally fine. That's great if they want to use more social studies as kind of their electives, if you will. So that's the basic requirement for senior year, is making sure they have that English and that social studies. So students got a little excited thinking, sweet, that's all I need to do. And I'm like, okay, we're going to keep talking, you guys, all right? So again, because I am so visual, I said, okay, that middle gray box, I said, let's just do a check. Do you have 2 boxes checked for English? And do you have at least 2 boxes checked for social studies? Okay. Then they need to choose an additional 7 to 10 boxes from any of the following. That could be math, science, or on the back, the electives. So for math and science, this is where it does always get a little tricky, because as students were looking at their credit check, they could see that, hey, I'm going to be all done with my math requirement. I'm going to be all done with my science requirement. And they're thinking, Ms. Cosgrove, I don't need to pick anymore. And I said, let's keep talking. Because, as we all know, what do colleges look for? As much math and science as possible. And I've had students say, but I'm not going to be a mathematician. I'm not going to be an accountant. I don't plan on working for NASA. I don't want any more math. And I said, I understand that. And they said, but Ms. Cosgrove, this school over here only wants 3 years of math. That's it. I'm fine. I'm good. I understand that, but that's where their face just kind of goes down. Say to get in, but a lot of times from these colleges, you're going to need to do math to graduate from the college. But I'm never going to be a math major. I understand that, but a lot of times for four-year schools, you're going to need some math to graduate from the college. So if you can continue taking math, continue taking science throughout senior year, you're just going to be in a better position as you enter college. Maybe you might only need a semester of math as opposed to a year of math. So that's always my plug to them. So for math and science, I always say to students, please just connect with your teachers to see what the next progression should be. Typically, it goes the intermediate algebra to geometry to advanced algebra to pre-calc. Once students are done with that pre-calc component, they have a few options. They could head to AP Calc, they could head to AP Stats, or they could head to IB Math SL. IB Math SL is kind of a lateral move with pre-calc. So students will certainly be learning new things in there, but it won't be that huge rigorous jump of an AP Calc or an AP Stats. I would say if your student's in pre-calc right now, I would love for them to continue with math. And sometimes it's about saying, okay, let's compromise. Can you at least commit to a semester of math? So that's my plug with math to the students. There are students in our pre-calc support. And I had some great questions from them saying, well, could they go on to AP Calc or AP Stats? And that's going to depend on each student, and that's going to be a conversation with the math teacher to see what would be an appropriate level to go on to. Because the pre-calc support and the regular pre-calc are vastly different. So if your student's in that situation, what Ms. Johnson, who the teacher is, said, please have them talk with me, meaning Ms. Johnson, to see what would be a good level for them to go into. For science, we have a lot of students in chemistry right now. And the next progression is often physics or IB physics. Again, IB will be just more rigorous, more time intensive. We also have an IB sports exercise science class that students could choose to go into. I'm very traditional. I really like the biochem physics route. Even when students say, but I want to go to med school, so I need to get as much biology as possible, I will say you also need to get physics as well. We also have students in IB biology right now. And they're kind of wavering a little bit of wondering, do I continue with IB biology because it is a 2-year program? Or do I go on to physics? Or do I do both? And we do have a lot of students that do both, continue with IB biology and pick up a physics. Okay? And then on the back of that sheet are all the electives that students can choose from. One thing that's kind of changed this year is the second box on the left-hand side called articulated classes. A lot of those classes are our business classes, as well as some art classes in there like digital artwork design and digital photo too. So the reason they're under this separate box is because these classes can potentially issue students college credit, elective college credits at area schools. So that's what's really neat about those classes. And then I wanted to put a little reminder for students at the very bottom, remembering that they cannot register for a student aid right now. It's just a study hall. And if they register below 14 classes, then they will be automatically given a study hall. So when students were taking a look at their credits, many of them were saying, I only need to take like 3 classes in senior year. I'm going to have the best schedule ever. Of course, I'm like, let's keep talking. okay? As a senior, they need to have 5 classes each semester, 5 academic classes. And a study hall and a student aid are not academic classes. So they need to carry 5 academic classes each semester. So we talked a little bit about the rite of passage of senior study halls. Yes, students could have 2 study halls each semester. They certainly could, provided they're meeting their college entrance requirements and their graduation requirements. Now, with that said, I reminded students to say, but study halls can be placed anywhere in the day, periods 1 through 7. There's nothing magical of getting a first hour study hall or a 7th hour study hall. They can go anywhere in the schedule. The other thing that I said to students is, well, you know, if you only register for 10 classes, hoping that you get 5 first semester and 5 second semester, that's the ideal world. What happens in the senior schedule, because a lot of classes are now just semester long, a lot of their electives they're going to choose, well, if they only register for 10 classes right now, what happens if 7 of those classes are only offered second semester? So now they're sitting with only 3 classes in first semester. Now they have to come see me and we have to scramble to try and find them more classes. And that's a hard position to be in. So I recommend to students to register for at least 12 classes, hoping that you can get 6 first semester and 6 second semester. It's always easier to exit an elective for a study hall than to try and scramble and get one in. So that was my message to them. I also reminded them that study halls can fall periods like 3 and 4. So you have a chunk of study hall time in your day. Some students love it. They love that nice 2-hour chunk of time where they can get a lot of stuff done. Other students get really bored with that. And McDonald's and Chipotle tend to look really good at that time. So I just wanted to caution them. And then, of course, the infamous question of, well, Ms. Cosgrove, can you get me to have an open hour, 1st or 7th hour? And they know that I can't do that. I can't schedule over 300 students or try and hand schedule to do that. It's honestly luck of the draw to make that happen. Also talked about academic sanity, making sure you keep your academic sanity for senior year. Registering for classes that you can be successful in. And I said to students, you know, when I see you in the computer lab in a week, please, I don't want to hear you say, hey, so-and-so, what should we take together? What should we do together? What should we register for together? Because it's no longer about that. It's about your student picking the class that's best for them, best for their interests, best for them to explore, best for their future. That's what it has to be about. The senior slide, the slide that I've shown them since 10th grade. And I said, you know what, you guys? That just really doesn't exist anymore. It did for my generation. There was something called a senior slide, but I said, yeah, I know the terminology is out there, but it no longer exists for you guys. And I said, what the reason is because colleges no longer want to admit students who go through a senior slide because they are finding it harder for students to get back up on the horse and perform their best out of the gates freshman year in college. So I said, juniors, there is no more senior sliding. That term is non-existent now. Then I showed them a slide that they saw in 10th grade. And in 10th grade, I was asking them, what have you been up to over the last few years? Kind of some general things. Of course, there's always somebody that says, Ms. Cosgrove, you forgot the games, PlayStation something or whatever. I'm like, I know. So I said, remember that slide from 10th grade? They're like, yeah. And I said, well, last year we talked about what else was coming on your plate as a junior and senior. So this is what you've been up to. This is what now is coming on your plate. And I said, and now we're here. It is on your plate. A lot of new things are right in your face on your plate. And I said, not that I'm counting, and I'm really not. And I know it's hard to see this, but I said, juniors, you have about 485 days until graduation. That's it. The look on their faces, priceless, absolutely priceless. So I said, now with all of this on your plate, it's important to, once again, be thinking about how to balance that puzzle. How to balance keeping a rigorous course schedule, not dropping off, saying, well, I don't know if I want to do math anymore. Somehow keeping up some rigor, keeping the sanity, being able to still be involved in activities, be able to get sleep, and be able to still be a kid. So with all that, I said, now there's some soul searching of how do you balance what you need to take along with everything else that is now on your plate. Then I wanted to add something else on their plate because I've had a lot of questions about PSEO. And PSEO is essentially where a student applies to the college, where they can go to the college and take college classes that will give them college credit as well as earn high school credit. So we're going to have some informational meetings the first week in March. We still want students to go through the registration process, but we're going to have some more meetings of how this process happens. I already have it podcasted, so I know students have said, well, Ms. Cosgrove, can you share the podcast with me? Absolutely, not a problem, if they want to watch it ahead of time. So essentially, our #1 school where students do go PSEO is Normandale. I love Normandale for PSEO. I think they are a great institution. So typically, for a current junior to be admitted to like a Normandale, they need to be around a 3.0 GPA. And the deadline is July 1st, so they have some time. And students get a little nervous with this idea of having to apply because they're like, well, if I apply, does that mean I have to go? And I said, no, it doesn't. You can apply. You can go through all the hoops of what you need to do for PSEO. And if you decide, you know what, thanks but no thanks, that's okay. Okay, so I really encourage students that if they're interested in this to come hear more information because it's a pretty in-depth process of how to maneuver PSEO. I found a screenshot for Normandale of an open house that they're having for PSEO on February 17th, so next week, I believe. And that is what I ended with students. So, questions? For their high school classes? Yeah. So the question is, when do they essentially find out their class schedule for senior year? And it will be the end of August is when they find that out. Power School typically opens end of August, right around there? Yep. Where they can see the schedule. Mm-hmm.
Do colleges care about credit hours as long as it's over a certain number?
From the college class?
Yeah, no, from a class, your number of credits you get at St. Louis Park High School. Yep. The college look at people that are taking a high number.
So the question is, if there's a student that graduates with 46 credits and a student that graduates with 56 credits, does that give them an edge in a college admissions decision? I have yet to see that happen. I have yet to see this student getting more of an edge because they took fewer study halls. I've never seen that. As I reminded the students, I said, gosh, you guys, this is it for your K through 12 registration. This is it. So,
I
yes?
think I've talked to you about this, but I know
I got a wonderful presentation coming up next, if you're able to stick around. So, some post-secondary information. And I have a lot of slides that I have for this, and we're not going to go over all of them. But I know when I go to presentations, I like to leave with information I can look at at a later time. So there's going to be some slides I'll just kind of quickly go through, but then you can have to peruse when you're ready to do that. So one thing when we talk to juniors, and for all students that matter at St. Louis Park, when it comes to post-secondary and we use the word college or university, we're not just referring to four-year, we're referring to two-year schools, technical schools, trade schools, essentially any education after high school we refer to as college. So ACT testing and SAT testing. That's the kind of the big one on students' minds right now. Well, the difference between ACT, SAT is really a regional preference. So I have a little map on here where the regional preference of ACT are the blue states on here, so the Midwest, and the SAT tends to be more coastal schools or highly selective schools. And I think it's interesting how Indiana is kind of right in the middle right there as a SAT, and I can pick on Indiana because I lived there for a little bit. ACT will test students in English, math, reading, science, and optional writing, and then they'll get an overall composite score. I would say about 90% of students at St. Louis Park just take the ACT test, about 90%. The SAT will give students 3 scores in verbal, math, and writing. So I tend to like the ACT and favor it a little bit more because I like how the subscores of English, math, science, reading, you can pull out all these little subscores. And I like that because I think it can help students demonstrate different strength areas within these subjects. So for the test dates of the ACT, and I would say students got a lot of this information right before winter break. There's some of the slides that students have already seen. There's new slides in here that they're going to see in about a month. But they did see the test dates. I took a screenshot of that, of when the national test dates are. Typically, the most popular times to take the ACT are April and June. I think the earliest that students tend to take it is February. Anything earlier than that, I tend to get just a little nervous. I get a little nervous because I worry that if they get a score that isn't what they were hoping it to be, that they get really nervous and anxiety and freaked out. And the reality is that if they take it too early, that could happen because they're still learning the material right now as a junior. So I personally like the earliest to take it is that February test date we just had, but otherwise April and June I think are great test dates. Now with that said, if students register for the April 18th test date, 10 days later they're going to be taking another ACT here at the high school. And also in that month are the MCA math tests. So they're going to have a lot of testing in that month. I do like the June test date as well. The little caution that I would put out there with that is that tends to be right after finals. So it can be a good and bad things. With good, that students are still amped up in kind of that finals mode, that testing mode. The bad thing, they are so done with school and don't want any more testing. They're ready for summer. So I think my test date of choice is definitely the April one. Students can also, when they're seniors, take the September test date and October test date if they want to retest and be just fine for college application deadlines. So as a senior, they can do a September and October test date. I know this screen is really hard to read, but I told students that I would have it up on a PowerPoint. But I wanted to find some really good differences between the SAT and the ACT, because that's often a big question, is what is the difference? And I won't go into detail of reading what some of the differences are, but I did find a nice chart that talks about the test style, the scoring, is there penalty for wrong answers, what the format looks like, what the difficulty levels are, what the math levels are, which tends to be more popular. So just something that students could look on to see what the difference is. And I know on the PowerPoint slides it's pretty much impossible to read. I apologize. I also wanted students to be aware of SAT test dates as well, because there are students that would like to take the SAT, and sometimes students want to do both just to see which one they like better, which format they like better, which score they might get a higher score on. So I wanted students to be aware of the test dates for the SAT. And on their Naviance account, I have a link regarding SAT-2s, which are the subject tests. So subject tests in like math, biology, chemistry, languages, US history. Those are specific subject tests that some colleges might want your student to do. Well, students got a little nervous because they're like, well, how do I know if I need to do an SAT-2 subject test or not? So we have a link on the Naviance website that when they click on it, there will actually be a report that comes up that says which colleges require SAT-2 subject tests, or if they're recommended. So I wanted students to be aware of where to find that information. Now, sending scores, and I'm going to just really pick on the ACT because that's our most popular. When students register for the ACT, they can send up to 4 free scores to a college, or 4 colleges, each test date when they register. Now, students get a little nervous because they're like, well, what if I don't do that well? Like, I want to see my score first. And so some students will choose not to send their scores. That's okay. However, it does cost money then when they want to send their score. And for this year, it's $12 per score to send to a college. So that can end up being a nice little chunk of change to send scores. So I tell students, you know, if you pick some schools when you're registering for the ACT to send, and let's say you don't do that well, and you're probably going to retake the test again, the schools will not ding you for having a low score. They're going to look at your highest score. And I would say that most colleges, most counselors say, send all your scores, go ahead. If you think you might want to go to the U of M, send your scores, it's okay. Because again, the colleges will take the highest score. Now, the piece that some colleges will tell students that they do is something called a super score, where they will pull out the highest sub-scores of your ACT. So your highest English score, maybe from an April test date, your highest math score from perhaps a June test date, and create a new super score. So there are colleges that will say right off the bat that that's what they'll do. I also think you just never know what they might do in that admissions table. Might they super score, but they don't tell you? If you're on the bubble, if your student's on the bubble, and if that super score could make it or break it, I'm like, send your scores. It's okay. The big question is, how do I practice for these tests? Well, I think it's really hard to study for these tests because it's essentially information that students should already have. But you can practice for them. And so the juniors last year took the plan test, which was the practice ACT test. And of course, I told them, hold on to your scores. Hold on to it, because you can see which scores you got, which answers you got right, which answers you got wrong, and you can go back and take a look at that. I don't think many held on because they kind of had a blank look a little bit. That's okay. But I offered them a link to actstudent.org where they have sample test questions that students can go look and see what type of questions are on there. Whether students get a book and go through a practice test, Whether they go through a program like Sylvan or Kaplan, where these programs will talk to you about how to finance ACT prep, which makes me a little nervous because it can get really expensive. The bottom line is, I told students, I want you taking practice test after practice test after practice test to get familiar with the test, to get familiar with the timing, to get familiar with how they're asking the questions. That's the best way to prep. And then also, if they take a Saturday test, to actually do a dry run a week or two before. Because a lot of students will practice, you know, Wednesday night a little here and maybe Sunday afternoon here. But I said, actually do a dry run. On a Saturday morning, you get up and you sit down at the kitchen table or wherever, and you start the ACT test at 8 a.m. So you can actually go through it in real world time. The high school also offers ACT online study sessions. And it's twice a month, and it's essentially an online program. And it's after school. And students got a little nervous about this being after school because they got things going on. And I said, that's okay if you can't make it after school, because our intern, Alicia, actually runs these programs. And she's here on Thursdays and Fridays, so if students want to get logged in and get their program, they can see Alicia on Thursdays and Fridays and get this program set up so they can work on it from their own time. So it's a nice online program. The other outside program that I like and that I've heard some good things about from past parents is an organization called ZAPS. I think they're really affordable. They do it in like one big chunk of time, and the new piece that they have is they also do webinars for kids. So if maybe a student can't get to a place, for an additional, I think it's $30, they can do a webinar at home. So I've heard good things from parents with the ZAPS company, so I thought I would just pass it on to you. So types of colleges. Oops. Students have heard about the difference between two-year schools and four-year schools and kind of what they have to offer. A lot of times in advisory, they've been going over the differences between 2- and 4-year schools. 2-year schools can be very affordable so that students aren't leaving college with a whole lot of debt. A lot of times I hear students say that they're not real interested in 2-year schools because they want to live in a dorm. They want to live on campus. I get it. And I found some interesting information of 2-year colleges that actually offer housing. So if a student's really interested in wanting to start their career at a 2-year school, there are schools in the state of Minnesota that do offer housing. Another way to be learning about colleges is something called MEF. It's the Minnesota Education Fair. And these fairs have anywhere between 150 to 200 colleges. St. Louis Park is actually hosting a college fair. And that is coming up on March 17th, I believe St. Patty's Day, March 17th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we will be bringing 10th and 11th graders to this fair, and it's going to be over probably 200 colleges that will be there from all across the country. So that's a great way to help students get exposed to different colleges. If you're interested in joining your student for some evening fairs, Wayzata and Chaska are also hosting these fairs in the evenings. On March 17th and March 19th. And then we also just got an invitation from Benilde that they are doing a college fair on April 21st in the evening. So great opportunity to go with your student and just start exploring and seeing what colleges are out there. One thing I always like to talk to students about, because they get nervous of, well, how do I go look at a college? Like, I don't know what to tell them my major is going to be or anything like that. And I said, that's okay. You don't have to know what you want to major in. You don't have to know what you want to do when you're 40. It's okay. But you can have an interest, and you can have a passion. And most students, if they kind of dig deep, will find an interest that they do have. I tell students that when I walked across my college graduation stage, this was college and I moved the tassel from here to here, nobody could have told me I'd be standing here. Not one person. I'd be like, you're crazy. I'm not, what? So, and it's just interesting where life leads you and the experiences that you have. To help students look at their interests, St. Louis Park is also doing a career fair on April 29th from 9:50 until 10:45. So that's a career fair that there's going to be a lot of different jobs here where students are going to go and explore and talk to people in, could be healthcare, business, law, police, whole bunch of different things. It's a really great program to help get those interests going and helping students to find out, boy, that job seemed interesting. So this is an amazing, amazing event that takes place. Now, I've still had students that even after talking with them, they're still like, seriously, Cosgrove, I still don't even know where to start. I'm still lost. I don't know what to do. Well, we have a lot of college representatives that come here into the counseling office that want to meet with students. Well, when I say that, students get nervous because they're like, well, is it like an interview? Do I have to talk? Are they going to be asking me questions? And I'm like, no, it's really about a sit and get, where they have a product to sell you. They want you to get interested in their college. So right before winter break, I challenged students to check out about 3 to 4 college reps. And the month of February, March, and April is going to be another big time that these representatives are coming in to our high school that would love to meet with students and give them information. Sometimes students, for whatever reason, they might forget, or maybe they don't want to miss that particular class. And I gave them a website. It's a fabulous website. It's called ecampustours.com, where they can get a virtual tour of a college campus. So one thing students hear me preach a lot about is the fit of a school. And I really think of it as buying a shoe. You know, sometimes those shoes look really awesome on the rack, and they look really pretty, and I think they're going to look really nice on my feet. But then you put them on, and they maybe don't feel so good, or they're not quite what you thought. And so I kind of think of that as a college, in college searching. So it's important of finding the right fit so that the personality of the college and the personality of the student are well matched. So it doesn't really need to be about, I want to find the #1 med school in the country. Because they might find the #1 med school in the country, but if that school is too small, too big, too far away, too close to home, it might not even matter that it's the #1. They're not going to get out of it what they should because it's not the right fit. So I've told students, you know, even just right here in the Twin Cities, to walk around 3 totally different campuses right here in the metro area, the U of M. Walking around the U of M, students will get a quick idea of what a big campus feels like. Then they could go across the street to Augsburg and get an idea of what a private school, a small school, feels like. Then they could go across the street again to MCTC to see what a 2-year school feels like. And they're going to get a huge idea of the difference of just those 3 schools. So what might happen? They might walk around the U of M and go, I kind of like this big school, but not in the Twin Cities, too close to home. So they might look at IU, Indiana University, Big Ten school, but in small town Indiana. Or they might walk around Augsburg and like that small school, but not in the big metro area. So maybe they might get interested in St. Ben's or St. John's or Gustavus or something like that. So it's just kind of, you know, getting those feelers out there of what type of environment are they interested in. The other thing that colleges are big on right now is social media. So I said to students, follow some of these schools on social media because then you can really get an insight of the personality of the college. from Facebook to YouTube to Pinterest. That's a new way to explore colleges. Sorry. We've also had students log on many times to their Naviance account. We've logged on last year, and then the last 2 times in their advisory, they've been on their Naviance account doing a personality interest inventory as well as a college search. So ask your student tonight, hey, how's this Naviance thing going? Show me the college search that you've done, or show me the interest inventories that you've done. Okay, so this is a powerful, powerful tool that we will use even more so, and especially as we head into senior year, because this is where we will be getting transcripts and things like that. So have them show you that Naviance site. This is just a screenshot within their Naviance site that they can do a college search. They can look up colleges, look at resources. And what's kind of fun is looking at something called scattergrams. Now this is kind of a crazy slide, but this can be kind of fun if students kind of want to look at the numbers of colleges in terms of GPAs, ACTs, things like that. And this is right in their Naviance site. And I like to pick on the U of M. So what this shows is a graph of GPA and then ACT. And I always have to have students help me now. Is this the x-axis or the y-axis? Because I can never remember which one. And they always know, so that's good. So what this shows is since 2010, we've had about 623 applications to the U of M since 2010. Well, when they take a look at this, these little green boxes are students that self-reported that they got accepted. And these tiny little X's are students self-reporting that they got denied. So just from St. Louis Park, students can kind of get a sense of what type of student from a numbers perspective does the U of M take. Okay, and the average is around a 3.6 and a 28 ACT. So that's something that they can do in their Naviance account if they like to look at those numbers. But I also caution that because numbers aren't everything in a college admissions decision. I also gave them this website looking at the U of M as well, and this is from a national perspective of students getting accepted to the U of M based on GPA and ACT. So they kind of had fun looking at this. This was kind of intriguing for them to see the numbers piece. So besides the numbers, it's really important of looking at the priorities of college in terms of the location, the academics, the fit, and they will hear me continue to talk about the fit of the college. So I also talked to students before winter break about when do they apply, because I had students getting nervous, worried that they were missing deadlines, wondering if they had to do applications right now. And I said, slow down, you're doing okay. In the fall and winter of 12th grade is when students will apply. And so when I saw them right before winter break, I said, think about this, you guys. This time next year, many of you will have about 90% of your applications completed. Once again, the eyes went boom, on the faces. So just to let them know that, they don't have to be doing applications, and I just threw out, just watch deadlines and be careful of that. And then I told them our school's timeline for that. I said, juniors, you don't need to be applying. When you come back as a senior, I'll be meeting with you the first or second week in classes to talk about how to apply to schools, how to log on to your Naviance and get transcripts. If you need to take another ACT. And I didn't say this, but a lot of students will take the ACT about 2 to 3 times. Some will take it 4 to 5 times, but I like 2 to 3 times. Anything more than that, the score tends to level off. So what information do college admissions officers look for? This was kind of fun to talk with them about. And again, because I'm so visual, I kind of like this inverted triangle where the top one is that academic record, followed by test scores, letters of recommendations, essays. Okay, so that's kind of the picture that I wanted them to get in their head. But really, what I want students to think about is their performance and their passion. Okay, because I think that's also what colleges will take a look for, They want to see the quality of your academic life, your performance. That's what they're looking for. They also want to see your passion. Are you passionate about something? They want to see the quality of your commitment. Not the quantity of what you're committing to, but the quality of your commitment. So that's what I'll talk about to students in about a month or so. And then I always like to talk about an X factor, because a student can be meeting all the requirements that a college is looking for. You're meeting the GPA, you're meeting the ACT, you're meeting the rigorous courses, but you get waitlisted or denied, and that makes no sense. Well, there's kind of this X factor, because one of the things that colleges take a look at is how well does the student fit the needs and mission of the college and university. Do they need an oboe player for their band? Do they need somebody from Idaho? Do they need more diversity? Do they need somebody who's interested in a major that they don't have a lot of kids majoring in? So that's kind of that X factor that we'll kind of never know about, but to just be aware of it. The other X factor is that colleges just don't want to enroll you, they want to graduate you. So they're taking a look at your student's record to see, can your student commit? Can your student follow through? And can your student persevere? Because their goal is they need to graduate that student, not just enroll them, but graduate them. So letters of recommendation, I told students you can always use one. You can always use one letter of recommendation. And I said to start thinking right now as a junior, who might that be? A letter of recommendation, typically from a core teacher. Okay? Somebody that can highlight your amazing qualities. And I think of a teacher letter as like the flashlight on the student, that they're highlighting that particular student in a very kind of narrow way, if you will, of how they know the student. And our recommendation is kind of the lighthouse light, where we're kind of looking at the whole picture of the student. So that's how I see the difference in those two letters of recommendation. Letters of recommendation is what gets the admissions officers discussing you. Your numbers get you to the table, get your application to the table, okay? The letters of rec get them discussing you. And the wild card is that essay. That essay is so valuable and so crucial. Your essay reveals something important about you that your grades and test scores cannot, which is your personality. It gives admissions officers a sense of who you are, as well as showcasing your writing skills. That's another piece. So essentially that essay lets you come to life. It turns your student from a 2D picture to a 3D picture, because that essay helps them jump off the page. So to think about, if there's 10 applications and one of them is your student, and those 10 applications have the same GPA, have the same ACT, have the same level of courses, have the same activities, how is that student going to come to life to stand out? And that's where the essay can really be a tipping point. Money. We talked a little bit about money with students. So there was a phenomenal financial aid night for a lot of senior parents. I think it was December, right before winter break, and it is online. So I would highly recommend as junior parents to take a look at that. And there will be another financial aid night for you as well next year. I talked with students because a lot of them come in and say, you know, Ms. Cosgrove, I got to find scholarships. I need to pay for college. How do I find all these scholarships? Well, I was at a financial aid conference a couple months ago, and the new data that we heard is only about 6% of tuition is paid for by scholarships. That's it, 6%. So I said to students, you know, I'm really not kidding when I say to get started and be looking right now, because they might not be able to apply for anything right now, and they won't be able to. But if they see a scholarship, and it'll probably be available next year, that they find online, and if they see, oh, I have to write an essay, or I have to do some project or something, I said, you guys, the money's not free with scholarships. You're going to have to do something. Okay, to have an idea of what that might need to be and to be thinking about it and to possibly be working on it in the summer, I said, you're going to be that much more ahead, because here's what happens. Senior year rolls around. Now they want to start looking for scholarships. And they see a scholarship they want to apply for, but they have to write a 3-page paper. They have to do some type of community service. They have to do some project on top of everything that's in their life senior year. And what happens? They're like, I don't have time for it, and they delete it. And so that's why I said, if you can just be looking right now, that's just going to put you ahead of the game. Right on the Naviance website is a great national scholarship search where students can put in some of their identifying information. And I said, don't make it too specific, keep it broad, where then students will get emails saying, this scholarship seems to fit you. And then they can take a look to see what it all entails. So that's right on their Naviance website. And I'm also going to tell students to be looking at merit scholarships. So when they're talking with colleges or when you're doing college visits, to be asking that college what merit scholarships are available. And it's just not for students with high GPAs. So to really be have that merit scholarship question with colleges, to be asking them that. I just wanted to give you some helpful websites for scholarship resources. These are some great websites, as well as to remind parents and students that there are schools that have reciprocity that can help with the total cost of the tuition. And that's with the Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, Manitoba, and some of the Iowa schools. And then a resource that doesn't get utilized too much is something called the Midwest Student Exchange Program. And that's with Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Wisconsin, that there's some tuition differences where students can get a little bit more of a break on tuition with some of these schools. So I just wanted to plant that seed for you so that if your student is looking out of state, just to keep that in mind. And then just productive time off. I know our students are tired. I know they need to rest. I know they need their playtime. I totally get it. But I would also encourage them to carve out some time to research. Not just research colleges, but to research maybe an interest of volunteering. Maybe to research a college campus. Maybe to research time with you at your job site or with another family member or friend on a job site. So to just research and find things out. Parents as a team player. That's my little one graduating from preschool. And I know I'm going to be sitting here very, very soon, and it's going to come too fast. So a few tips that I wanted to put out there. Don't be the driver of this. It's going to be very tempting. But be in the car, but be in the back seat. Let your student drive this. Okay? Be open to dialogue. Be ready for the, I don't know, Mom. I'll worry about it later, Dad. You're stressing me out. Stop asking me. Okay? Be ready for that. It's going to happen. Acknowledge that. Support them. And support them with an independent partnership. It's kind of a weird word to say, an independent partnership. Because as their students are moving into senior year, they want that independence. They're striving for it. But they also still need mom and dad, aunt and uncle, whoever it might be. Piece of advice I saw from NACAC, which is the National Association for College and Admissions Counseling. Set up a weekly or daily planning meeting. And what I mean by this is maybe set up a 20-minute meeting with your student. Maybe it's daily, maybe it's every other day, maybe it's weekly. from say 7:30 to 7:50. And that is your time to talk as a family about college. Because what I hear from students is they're like, well, I sit down at the supper table and I just want to enjoy supper, and then they're asking me about this, this, or that, and then I'm getting stressed out. Or I don't know when they're going to ask me, and I feel like if I see them, are they going to ask me? So to set that time with your students so that they know this is the time. This is often what I've heard, and this isn't a direct quote, but it's pretty close. I'm doing my homework, Ms. Cosgrove. Then they come in to ask me about college. Then I get all stressed out and it leads to an argument. Then I'm just done. I don't even want to do my homework anymore. I don't even want to think about college. Okay? That's very common what I hear in senior year. So I really advise you to set that meeting time so that they know when it's time to talk. This is a message that I'm going to give to juniors when I see them in a couple months. Juniors, a message for you. At the end of the day, most parents want what is best for their kids. The approach they take to meet that goal will sometimes create stress, so help them out. Suggest that they ask how you are doing without referring to the college process from time to time. Just ask them how they're doing. Remind your parents that the best way they can support you is by simply doing what we always hope our parents will do. Love us, listen to us, and be there for us when we need them. Your parents' responsibility is to strike a balance between sharing your dreams and helping you understand the reality of this process. It's not an easy job, but hey, you signed up for it. Okay? Questions?
My older boy's in college, and one of the things that I found when we were trying to talk through some things in comparing schools was he was looking at public colleges in the upper Midwest, for example. And I was trying to find a way for like merit scholarships. He had a pretty good ACT score, but not great. And he had a pretty good grade point average, not great. And I was trying to figure out if there was a way to find a chart or something that compares the North Dakota states to the South Dakotas to the Iowa states on the merit. Like, I ended up finding out that the school he picked had a lot lower ACT requirement that would then guarantee a certain amount of money every year, but where it was way higher at other schools. But I didn't know if there was like a website or something that just compared schools for merit scholarships, just like a baseline thing. Or?
Yep. I'm trying to find. I have right on their Naviance account. So the question is how to find merit scholarships, how to know if they're out there, what do they look like, and I think it's trying to find it here. So right on the Naviance website, I have a link that actually says merit scholarships. And so your student can log in, or you can log in with your student and click on that and actually type in the college name to see what merit scholarships there are. I haven't seen a website that necessarily compares merit scholarships, but I really like this link because if you have an idea of a college that you're looking at, you type in that name and the merit scholarships will come up.
I would assume that you're available to answer personal questions by email, that would probably,
Absolutely.
if we have something that's sort of.
Absolutely. Yep. Email is my preferred method with communication, but absolutely, without a doubt. Yes. Yep. All right. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time because I know it's very chilly and icy out there. Thank you for hanging in there with me. This is something I love to talk about, and and my counselor colleagues are like, hurry up, Heidi, come on, you're talking too much. So thank you guys for coming in. I appreciate it.